Hey there, and welcome to On the House, Episode 2, the show that guides you towards what is possible with various real estate investment strategies. I'm your host, Kevin Romines.
I'm your host, Terrell Paulson.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about lending options for fix and flips, BRRRRs, and house hacking.
Be sure to listen all the way through to hear the various lending strategies you can use to reach your goals. Before we talk about the financing that is available, let's start with what a fix and flip, a BRRRR, and a house hack is, plus their differences. Fix and flip, you will purchase the property below market value due to the rehab that will be needed. You'll estimate your purchase, closing, rehab, carrying, and selling closing costs. After that, you'll estimate the profit that you want to make at the time you sell the property. This will give you your max allowable offer, so you will buy it, rehab it, and then sell it to get your profit. The BRRRR model is basically the same as a fix and flip, except at the end, you won't be selling the property, and so you'll be refinancing the property to hold as the cash flowing rental. And finally, the house hack, which is when you will live in the property as your primary residence and will rent out the other parts of the property. In the case of a single family residence, you'll be renting out the other rooms to help offset the mortgage payment. In the case of buying a 2 to 4 unit, this means you will occupy one unit, do any of the rehab that you had planned, and then rent out the other units to either offset your mortgage or cover all of your mortgage, plus throw a little bit of profit or cash flow per month. Now that you know the basic definition of each investment type, let's talk about the financing available for each type and when to use certain types of financing for each.
On hard money is typically localized institutional lenders that has limited docs that are required to close the loan in as few as 2 to 3 days to as much as 10 days. If you have a lot of competition on the property, this will be the one of the two choices that you're going to want to choose because they can close very, very quickly compared to national fix and flip money. It depends on the experience level that you have, how many exits you've had in the last 24 months. An exit is where you have taken on a property, you've either put hard money on it or fix and flip money or private money. And then you've rehabbed the property and you exited by either selling or renting the property. And if you're going to rent the property, typically you're going to refinance when you're all done. So again, they're looking for how many exits you've had in the last 24 months. That will dictate their terms to you. The down payments typically run 5 to 20% down payment plus closing costs of about 4 to 5% of the loan amount. Up to 100% of the rehab costs are covered by the lender. The loan term ranges for 6 to 18 months. So you're going to want to pin down the loan term, make sure that you get the loan term for a long enough period of time such that you can get that rehab done and get either the refinance done or get the sale done. You don't really want to get into extensions because if you get into extensions, they can be costly. So communicate with me, your lender, and I'll help you kind of optimize the proper amount of time that you should be spending on that. On national fix and flip money, the terms tend to be better than localized hard money, but the drawback is it takes 3 to 4 weeks to close, especially if it's your first deal through them. So with regards to that, you got to decide to what level of competition do I have on this property. For instance, if the property is on the MLS, you can assume that you've got a fair amount of competition on that. And because you've got a fair amount of competition, is a national fix and flip money going to give you the advantage in terms of time frame for closing compared to localized hard money? So if your offer is identical to somebody else, but they can close in 7 days and you're asking 3 to 4 weeks, the seller's more likely to pick their offer and you would lose out. So you've got to make that assessment right up front. And typically, I say if it's on the MLS, don't think about going national fix and flip money. It'll take too long. The other side of the coin, national fix and flip money also requires a full formal appraisal, whereas localized hard money, they do their own internal appraisal. They determine their own value. And so you don't have the wait time of the appraisal. In Western Washington, most of Washington, the turn times on appraisals right now is about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So that's part of what makes up that 3 to 4 week process with a national fix and flip lender, whereas a localized hard money lender can close on the deal in as little as 2 or 3 days to maybe 10 days. So just a few differences there. There's also quite a bit more paperwork that you're going to be submitting to the National Fix and Flip Money. It's kind of a midpoint between an actual regular mortgage that you would do for a purchase in terms of what they ask for docs, but compared to local hard money, the local hard money just wants just a couple of documents and then they're ready to close. So you've got to make the proper assessment, and I'll help you with that process.
So on the National Fix and Flip, does it actually matter how many exits you have specifically with them, or just in general?
It's in general.
Okay.
They just want to see that you've got the experience. The more experience you got, the lower the rate. Private money is a lot like localized hard money. They want very few documents, and they can close in 2 to 10 days. So very, very quickly. They're a bit more creative when it comes to private money versus hard money. We can do some creative things. I've done 100% financing recently on a deal that I didn't think I could get it, but I honestly did. So it was surprising. So private money can be a great choice for your fix and flips as well. Talk to me about the private money and we'll discuss the options. On BRRRR models, you have the same 3 choices. You have the localized hard money. You also have national fix and flip money as well as private money. The choice that you're going to make there is going to come down to how fast you need to close. Again, is it on the market? Is it on the MLS? It's got a lot of eyeballs on it. If it is, then you need to do financing that would be a fast close. If it's an off-market deal and you want to get a little bit better terms, and the seller's willing to agree to 3 to 4 week close time, then you can go national fix and flip money and get maybe a little bit better terms than you could on local hard money as well as private money. Also on a BRRRR, the main intention is when you get to the point of the refinance, you want to be in a position that you've got enough equity that you can pull enough cash out to get all your money back out of the deal. That's the critical point that everybody tries to get to. And that's really important. So you want to make sure that your numbers are correct right up front, that you have the correct ARV, and that you have the correct numbers for your rehab and all your closing costs associated, as well as your carrying costs. Once you've crunched all your numbers and you feel confident that you'll have enough equity that you can get all your cash back, then you can replenish the money that you used for the down payment and the closing costs. And now you can move on to your next deal. That's the trick. That's the whole game plan. And you don't want to leave any money into the deal unless you absolutely have to, so that you are constantly replenishing your nest egg, and your nest egg is used for your down payment and your closing costs.
The house hack, the financing available for it is you can pretty much use any loan type, Fannie, Freddie, because it's your primary loan. But the 2 best loan types that we have found so far have been the VA and the FHA. The VA is 100% financing on 1 to 4 units, whereas the FHA is 3.5 down payment on to 1 to 4. Most of these other types of plans for 2 to 4 units are going to be as high as 25% down. Most borrowers that will do the house hack method are trying to get that low down payment so they can get into investing at a very low cost. And the rates on a VA and an FHA are very favorable to owner occupied. One of the options that you can do on the house hack when you have a 2 to 4 unit is you could either rent out long-term or short-term to try to boost your cash flow. Long-term is much more of a conventional type where you're just constantly getting that money every month, whereas the short-term rental is kind of hit and miss, and it kind of depends on how the market for Airbnb or Vrbo is going at that time, but they have been proven to be very good at cash flowing on these properties. And Mr. Kevin?
Yes.
So if you would like to elaborate any more on the short-term rentals.
Yeah, we definitely have a few clients that have some short-term rentals. They typically do anywhere from 3 to 5 times the revenue that a long-term rental would throw off. But there's a lot more involved. Obviously, there's the management, there's the turnover in between your clients, and the cleaning and things of that nature. But even with those additional expenses, they're coming out considerably better in terms of revenue than a long-term rental. So I wouldn't be afraid to do it on maybe one or two of your rentals, if depending on how many that you have. I would probably do the bulk of them as long-term rentals, month to month, or long-term leases. But I would definitely supplement with a couple of short-term rentals. It's just flat proven to be very profitable.
Kevin, as our hard money guru here, what are types of questions that you want to ask the hard money or the private money lenders?
That's a good question. There's a number of things that you kind of want to concentrate on. I will handle those questions for you. I know all the hard money. I know all the private money. I know how each and every one of them operates. And part of the thing that I do is I make sure that I place the loan with the proper lender that fits the goals of the customer. For instance, some of the questions that you might want to ask would be, how long will you write the term? Most terms are 6 to 12 months. Do you have a special project that maybe needs 18 months or 24 months? The term is important because at the end of the term, if you need to extend because you're still not done with the property, then the extension costs are typically 1 point, and that ranges anywhere from 45-day extension to a 3-month extension. If you start adding up those extension costs, they can be rather costly. So you would rather build in an extra term up front. So if you need 6 months, let's do 9 months. If you need 9 months, let's do 12 months, just to keep you safe. So that would be one of the things that you would want to ask. You want to ask also, how do they handle the draws? On the draws, there's two ways that they'll do that overall. One is they'll pre-fund the draw, meaning that they're going to release the money for you to get that first section of work or rehab done on the house. The other method is they will reimburse the draw. Well, the drawback to reimbursing the draw is you just put 5, 10, 15, 20% down on the property, plus you paid your closing costs. Now you got to come up with another $10,000, $15,000 to get the rehab done, only to get that reimbursed. Well, it takes a little bit of pressure off of you in terms of how much money you might need if they pre-fund the draws. And there are some hard money lenders that will do that and some that won't. And I know the ones that will. So if you need that, that's going to be important for you. The next thing, did you have any questions on that, Terrell?
I just had the one of, I guess it's not really a question so much as a comment with if you end up getting too many of those extensions and you've already prepped for all your carrying costs, that can really blow your carrying costs like right off the scale.
Yeah, it does. And that's, it can be a common mistake, especially with a newer flipper. But that's the reason I'm there, is I want to guide you. I want to make sure that you understand where are some pitfalls along the way and how to avoid those pitfalls. Because if you're eating into your profit, what if there's a mistake that comes up on the property? You didn't see a given repair that needed to be done, and you've already eaten into your profit through draws and extensions and things of that nature. So you just got to be careful with that. That's a good question. The next one would be, do they require inspections? If so, who does them and at what cost? Some of my hard money lenders will just have you take pictures of your progress on the rehab and show receipts, and then they'll disperse the next draw. Others will require a physical inspection. They want to have eyes on the ground. Somebody comes out and sees that you've gotten XYZ work done. They write up a quickie report, get it to the hard money lender or the private money lender, and then the private money lender will release the funds for the draw. And that whole process could take 2 to 5 days. So you've got to understand, who are you working with, and there is convenience in the fact that you can just take your own pictures, send them in with the receipts, and get your next draw. So those are some important points to be talking about as well. The next thing that you might want to talk about is, how is interest charged? There's two main ways that interest is charged on a fix and flip. They actually have names. It's kind of weird that they got names, to me anyway. One is called Dutch interest, and the other is called New Jersey style. Dutch interest means that you're going to pay interest on the full amount of the loan, even if they haven't dispersed some of the draws. So that can be a drawback, especially if you've got a big rehab that you're doing. because maybe they've only dispersed 15 of the $70,000 on the rehab. Well, you're still paying interest on that full 70,000 plus whatever your acquisition cost was. So that's kind of one of those things. New Jersey style interest is they're only charging interest on the amount that has been dispersed. So obviously you're going to have your initial disbursement for the acquisition of the property, and maybe you've got your first draw of say $15,000. Well, you still might have another $55,000 worth of draws that are coming up, but you haven't had them dispersed. Well, you're not paying on New Jersey style. You're not paying interest on that $55,000, and it's not a huge difference, but it adds up, and it can detract from your profits. So that's another point that you kind of want to bring up with them and get that nailed down.
I was not aware that we've got different names.
Yeah, it's just weird. To me, it's weird. But I guess there's a reason that they do that.
I mean, if you can refer to it as one and someone understands, I understand it from that point. It's just odd. I see the oddness there.
Yeah, it gets a little bit weird there, but I'm so used to it because I've been doing it for so long that but the average customer just isn't aware that they're named, and there's actually two different styles, and it makes a difference on your overall carrying costs.
Right.
And that's going to be important. So the other question that you can ask is, will they allow you to roll the closing costs on the purchase into the loan? I've got some local hard money lenders that will do that, and I've got the majority of the others won't. So you're going to pay that at the time of closing, as opposed to rolling it in the loan and then you pay it at the end when you either sell or you refinance. It's kind of more convenient to pay it at the end, but and it lessens the burden on the amount of cash that you're going to need to close the transaction. So that's kind of why I like it, but the vast majority of them, you have to pay that at the time of closing. I do have a private money lender that does roll the closing costs, and I also have a institutional hard money localized lender that will roll it into the closing costs. Other than that, all the rest of my lenders, you've got to pay it at the time of closing. And then again, how much does an extension cost? I kind of went through that a little bit earlier, but let me run through that again. Typically, the extension time frame is between 45 days and 3 months. Each lender's a little bit different on that. And you're typically going to pay 1 point for that extra 45 to 3 month time frame. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but honestly, it adds to your carrying costs and it detracts from your profit. So you want to avoid that if you can avoid that. I take the extension if you need it, but if you can avoid it, that would be better. Is there any minimum interest charges, such as if you paid the loan off in the first 60 days? The majority of the lenders that I work with, there is no minimum interest charges. So you can get in, if you can get in and out of the rehab and you get it sold pretty quickly or you get it refinanced pretty quickly, that's great because you're saving carrying costs and therefore you profit potentially more. So the faster you can get through the whole process, the better it is for you in terms of your profitability.
All right. So normally on our typical purchases, we try to negotiate that the seller pays the closing costs. Are you able to do that on these investment type purchases as well?
The answer is yes and no. The house hacks, because that's more of a normal purchase process, you can ask for the seller to pay your closing costs. You would have to come in with a very competitive offer in order to get that done. But generally speaking, the answer is yes, you could do that. On fix and flips and BRRRR models, because they're investment properties and there's other investors, there's a lot more competition on those types of products. And because there's more competition, if you were to ask for the seller to pay your closing costs, typically that's frowned upon. The seller's not going to want to do that. The only way that they would possibly do that is if you had a much higher offer price than somebody else. It's almost better just to write a very clean offer, and with that clean offer, you're not asking for the seller to pay your closing costs, just because it could put you in a disadvantage in terms of being able to get the property that you want to get. Okay, that's all the time that we have for today. We want to thank you for joining us for our latest episode of On the House. Hopefully, we provided enough detailed information that you can get your next project off the ground. Give us a call when you're ready.
Make sure to stay connected on all of our platforms, including South Sound Real Estate Networking on Facebook, On the House on YouTube, and all the places that you get your podcasts.
Stick around for our next episode on fix and flips and single family rentals, as well as 2 to 4 units with Jerry Baker with Unique Property Solutions. We'll see you on the next one.